Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Just give everyone a minute here to get into the Zoom. My name is Nico Muratori. Welcome to Homemade. Today I'm going to be joined by Mary Cooper. She's going to be our chef in the chat. Hi, Mary. How's it going?
Hello. Happy Fish Day to you. I've been so looking forward to this class.
Happy Raw Fish Day indeed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Today we're going to be partnering with the Fulton Fish Market, one of New York City's oldest fish markets since 1822, more than 200 years in business. One of the largest and oldest seafood markets in the country, and now offering nationwide shipping directly to your door. So get some of the best fish in the world shipped to your house if you want to. Check out their website, fultonfishmarket.com. If you use the code Crudo, you can take 10% off an order. And if you subscribe, you'll be able to get 15% off of every order. So check it out, fultonfishmarket.com. So today, we're going to be going through 4 different recipes that all involve beautiful raw fish. Excuse me. Folks often think about raw fish, sashimi, crudo, as only being a restaurant food. And today we really want to show you that you can get this fish, high-quality sushi-grade fish, shipped to your door and make these delicious recipes at home. Awesome for a dinner party, awesome for an appetizer, or just a really protein-rich snack in general. One of my favorite things to eat, raw fish. Mary, what's your favorite raw fish preparation?
It's tuna. It's anytime I walk into any sort of sushi space. I just had no idea that we could make all of this in our houses, I will be honest. And
Absolutely.
I eat a lot of salmon. So raw fish, I'm down. Teach me everything.
Amazing. So please, folks, today, as you have questions, please pop them into the chat, and Mary will make sure that those questions get to me so that we can answer anything that you might want to ask during class today. But so a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do. We're going to start with our scallops because we're going to make a ceviche. This is going to take a little bit of time, so we'll get that going first and then pop it in the fridge. After that, we're going to roll into a Sicilian tuna crudo, really beautiful preparation with some lemon, pistachios, and olive oil. Ultra simple, clean, and delicious. After that, we're going to go into a salmon crudo. We're going to be doing that one with some soy, a little bit of grapefruit juice, some jalapeno for some spice, a little bit of sesame oil and sugar to help offset it. And then after that, we're going to do a North African red snapper crudo where we use some harissa, a little bit of preserved lemon, some tomatoes, and some cilantro. So really kind of bright, delicious flavors on all that, and then we'll circle back and finish up that ceviche at the end of class. So let's get started.
It sounds like the perfect day. Let's do this.
It's a pretty sweet meal. Can't lie. Definitely a pretty dreamy meal today. So first thing we're going to do is we're gonna check out our scallops. And so when you get scallops from the fish market, the first thing you want to do is pull off the little foot. And so if you've never heard that term before, the scallop basically has a little bit of a connector muscle that helps connect it to its shell. And we don't like to eat those. They're a bit tough. They're chewy. You could save it if you want to make fish stock or something like that. But I would say the first thing you want to do is clean off those little pieces, which I've already trimmed up, and then get our scallops ready to cut and make our ceviche. So first thing we're going to do is just grab these little scallops, and we are going to cut them into basically a dice. And so if you're working with larger scallops, maybe you want to go 6 pieces, but I'm just going to cut these into about 4 or 5 pieces, 4 or 6 pieces each. Nice little bite-sized pieces, kind of just like this. I think that's absolutely perfect size. And then we're going to add them over into this bowl here. And so these scallops, really amazing wild-caught scallops from New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is a special place to me because I grew up in Massachusetts. New Bedford is one of the scallop capitals of the world. They fish some really, really beautiful, beautiful scallops out of those waters, and I'm thrilled to be using them today.
We have some folks in the chat. Gail says that she loves their scallops, and to have a reliable scallop hookup is huge. I feel like just
Absolutely.
raw fish that you enjoy, that you trust.
Yeah, and these scallops in particular, this is a dry pack scallop, and so what that means is they're not swimming in any liquid. This is really just like an instant quick frozen scallop, and so you're getting that really amazing fresh quality that you can defrost in your fridge, pat dry with a paper towel, and then either sear or do something lovely like this, like a ceviche. Raw or cured scallops like the ceviche are one of my favorite ways to eat scallops. It really highlights the kind of sweet flavor that scallops have when we add in that little bit of acid from the lemon juice, and then kind of spice this up with a little bit of the ají amarillo, which is a Peruvian chili paste that we're going to use to help kind of cure these scallops and start that ceviche. So after cutting up our scallops, next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit this with a bunch of lime juice. And so this is the juice of about 2.5 limes. to the tune of about a half a cup of lime juice. And so we want to use a pretty copious amount of this citrus because when we're talking about ceviche, we're really using the citrus and the acid to cook the fish. And while we're not cooking the fish with heat, we are cooking it with acid. And so first thing I like to do, dump that juice all over the top and then just take a spoon and mix it all together. Next ingredient is super fun. This is ají amarillo paste. And if you've never heard of this pepper before, it is of Peruvian origin and it has this crazy fruity, amazing spice to it. It's not, it's not going to totally blow your palate out with its heat, but it definitely does have a little bit of a kick to it. So if you're adverse to spice, maybe a little bit less. But I'm going to go in with about a whole tablespoon right here.
Oh, let's do it. Where can you normally find amarillo?
So fresh, they're really hard to find,
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
I figured.
I grew them last summer because I love them so much.
Oh.
Sometimes they'll go by the name of a lemon drop pepper, and so you can source those seeds online if you want to grow ají amarillo, lemon drop pepper, very similar. But this paste is a Peruvian product that you can find at a lot of grocery stores at this point, and also online if you don't have, if you can't find this in your local grocery store. The ají amarillo paste is just really beautiful, nice to have in the fridge, add it into soups, stews, etc. Add it into an aioli, it's amazing. But today, adding it into our ceviche. So lime juice, ají amarillo, and we're going to go in with a little bit of salt and pepper here. And the salt is also just going to kind of help start to cure those scallops. Mix this all together, and then we're going to pop it in the fridge and let the scallops start to cure and cook with that acid. And we could eat this right now, but
That was going to be my question.
which is a great question. You could eat this right now, absolutely. But if you want the texture of the fish to just have a little bit more firmness and really just kind of be a much more pleasant thing to eat, when we make a ceviche, we like to let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes in the fridge, let it chill, let it cure, and then we'll come back to this at the end of the class. We'll garnish it up and we'll taste it.
Awesome.
Just going to pop this in the fridge and we'll be right back.
And then it's on to our next fish already? This is amazing.
We're doing four fishes today, so we'll keep it moving.
Perfect.
Next up, we're gonna roll into our Sicilian tuna crudo. So what we have is a beautiful piece of ahi tuna here. This is a kind of like a nice squarish block of ahi tuna, and when I do a crudo like this, I oftentimes like to end up with nice rectangular sized pieces. And so the first thing that I do when I'm gonna work with this tuna is make sure I have a nice sharp knife, and then we're going to kind of cut this down the middle on the diagonal, just like this. And then we'll be able to go and slice this fish and start. And so if you notice on top of the tuna, similar to a steak, you can kind of see the direction that the protein strands are running inside of the tuna. And so I, similarly to meat, like to cut this against the grain. And so if you don't know what that means, when you're eating a piece of steak or a piece of chicken and most proteins, you can usually see which direction the protein is running. And when you slice with the grain, sometimes you end up with a little bit of a chewier texture in your mouth, and it's not as sort of succulent and delicious. And so with the tuna and a steak and other proteins, I like to cut against the grain. And so with the tuna, really easy to see. You can kind of see those lines going through the fish, and we'll slice it that direction. Mary, what do we got?
What's the best tuna?
That's a great question. I don't know that there's a right answer to what is the best tuna, but for for me, I love ahi tuna. This Pacific tuna is absolutely outstanding. Here in Seattle, we get a lot of albacore tuna as well, which is a white tuna that they fish locally here. Very delicious. When you have your bluefin tuna as well, kind of higher grade sushi tuna, really fabulous. And so I think for me, the ahi and the bluefin are my two favorite kinds of tuna.
Awesome.
Both kind of larger fish, 400 plus pounds, really big,
Sure.
really
Easy.
beautiful. Yeah,
Easy to catch.
not so easy to catch, but definitely easy to deal when you get a nice 7-ounce portion from Fulton.
Perfect.
So we're gonna get started. We're gonna start this one up. So got a plate here, and one tip that I always like to give when we're doing a crudo class or having a raw fish is I love to put my plates in the fridge first, chill them down just a little bit, so this way we kind of preserve that cold temperature of the fish when we put it onto the plate. So chill it down for about half an hour in the fridge or 5 minutes in the freezer just to get that plate nice and cold. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut our fish and start to assemble it on the plate. So we're gonna cut about 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick, and then we'll go from there. So I like to, when I'm cutting fish, especially like tuna, I like to work towards myself. If you've ever been to a Japanese restaurant and kind of seen how they cut sashimi, this is a really kind of nice technique where you can hold the fish right here and then bring the knife just down kind of towards yourself on a slight angle, slight bias, if you will. And so I'm just going to continue through this and cut this into between 6 and 7 pieces. And as you notice, the knife really glides right through that. We're cutting against the grain of the tuna, and it's a really kind of easy slice right through the fish. So same thing on the other side, kind of start with the knife at the top, and I'm just dragging that knife back towards myself. There's not really too much of a sawing motion here, kind of a nice gentle cut. Mary, what do we got in the chat?
I'm wondering why you're wearing one glove.
That's a great question. So when we're working with raw fish, we want to keep our hands super clean. This is something where we want to stay extra sanitized. And for the purposes of not turning around every time I'm making a different dish, I'm going to keep a glove on and change my gloves throughout the day. At home, as long as you're keeping clean hands, clean knives, clean cutting board, totally fair not to use gloves. But for the purposes of class, I want to stay engaged with you guys.
Yeah,
so we're going to keep
fish speed class.
keep a glove on. We got to do four dishes. So.
Oh, these look beautiful, sushi level.
Yeah, so now we're gonna grab our plate and we're just gonna arrange the fish kind of across the plate. And so we'll take the fish and just start putting it into kind of little, arrange it however it feels right to you. If you're using a rectangular platter, you can kind of offset them and go kind of the window method like this, or if you're using a round plate, really just kind of get them all around this plate and make it look really beautiful kind of in the center of the plate. And so that's our first step, really, just get that fish cut, get it onto the plate. Next up, we're gonna do the Sicilian treatment to this fish. And so this is a super simple preparation, and it involves a beautiful lemon, and we're gonna zest some lemon all over the top of this. So we'll start with that. And one of the reasons I like to get the lemon on there first is that it helps sort of like expel some of the essential oils from the lemon when we use the microplane, and grate a little bit of lemon zest on top. And then also it gives it a minute for that flavor to kind of sit in on the fish before we garnish it up with the olive oil and the and the pistachios. So I'm gonna take my microplane and very gently, not pressing too hard with my microplane, start to do a little bit of lemon zest. And every kind of time I'm running it across the microplane, I'm tapping it just a little bit. And this way I'm making sure that all that lemon zest is coming off the microplane directly onto the fish. And you can see those beautiful curls of lemon zest just kind of accenting this fish as we go here. And right away, when you're using a microplane on a citrus like this, you're smelling those essential oils from the lemon. It smells outstanding. And so I'm feeling really good about just that little bit of lemon on top of our fish. Next up, we're gonna season the fish. And we're gonna use some nice flaky salt today. If you've never heard of flaky salt before, you could buy something like a Maldon salt in the grocery store. Really nice, coarse salt, but very thinly shaved. And so this way you can kind of have it cover the surface area of the fish without it being too salty. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and season each piece of fish with a little bit of this Maldon salt.
Does Maldon salt sort of melt in your mouth?
Absolutely. And the other nice reasoning of using the flake salt is it will actually crunch in your mouth a little bit. Perfect. And these flakes are so kind of fine and beautiful that you can put, I'm seasoning these a fair amount, but it's not going to be overly salty. Really, we just want to have this fish seasoned and help bring out the flavor of that tuna. I think when we're cooking, a lot of folks are afraid of using salt, and in this preparation, we really want to have the fish sing and want to have this simple preparation, kind of glow. And so that salt is just bringing out more flavor in the tuna. The lemon is going to taste better. The pistachios are going to taste better. Everything just to sort of draw out some more flavors from the fish. We're not trying to cure this fish at all in this preparation, so really the salt is just for when we're eating it. Next thing we're going to do is go in with our olive oil. So we have some nice extra virgin olive oil, and this is one of those dishes where it's really up to you. I love my fish like this, swimming in olive oil. So we're going to give a good couple of tablespoons all over the top of this fish. And this is a dish where you want to use that nice salad olive oil or your finishing oil that you might have in the cabinet, or an excuse to go out to a store and buy yourself a really nice bottle of olive oil. It really, with this preparation, you want to use something that's really nice, and an olive oil that might have some nice grassy notes that's really going to sing alongside the tuna, the lemon, and the pistachios. Last but not least, let's garnish this up. A little bit of pistachio, super simple. These are just toasted and chopped pistachios, and that's it. So let's take a look at this first one. This is super simple, really delicious. Now comes the fun part. Wow. Let's give it a taste.
Oh yeah, we're tasting as we go today.
That is stunning.
That's a happy chef.
Absolutely delicious. The nuttiness from the pistachio gives a little bit of a nice texture in the mouth, as well as it plays so well with kind of that spicy grassiness of the olive oil, and together with the tuna, which is a very mild, this tuna is a very mild flavor, not fishy at all. And it all sings incredibly well together. A little bit of zing from that lemon on the acid, And that is outstanding. One more piece. And then we'll move on to the next one.
Well, that's just to fuel you up for the salmon crudo next.
Delicious.
Gorgeous. And we'll show, I know that folks are requesting some sort of top-down views. I'd love to see all of our dishes at the end all together. I think we should put them all together.
Absolutely, yeah. That sounds
great. So, Lena,
great.
don't worry. We will show you that dish because I need to see it again, too.
All right, next up, we're going to move on to our salmon. And what we have here is like a really nice kind of center cut from the loin of the salmon, so that means from the thickest part of the fillet. And so this is going to be really nice and easy for us to kind of slice for our crudo, as it's already in that kind of nice long rectangular shape. And with our crudo today, we're going to make a little dressing. And so we'll just kind of pull our ingredients to the front before we get started here. So we have a little bit of grapefruit juice, pinch of sugar, a little bit of soy sauce that we've diluted with just a little bit of water, and then some sesame oil. And then last, our garnish is going to be a little bit of nice thinly sliced jalapenos for this dish.
So
Mary, what do we got?
As we get into this next cut,
Yeah.
what could we talk briefly about the raw food risks here? Why are we cooking, or rather not cooking, 4 cuts of fish in 45 minutes, and is that okay? Can we split this?
It's a great question. And so when you're working with raw fish in general, when you want to eat, whether it's a crudo, a sashimi, or a ceviche type preparation, first and foremost, the most important thing is sourcing your fish. And so making sure that you have a reputable source, that you can get really high quality fish that's coming from great fishermen, whether it's in the United States or abroad, but a source that you trust. And so with getting this beautiful fish from Fulton, this is part of the sushi bundle. And so all of this is the sushi-grade fish that you're able to eat raw. And so that means that they know the source of where these fish are coming from, or they have been treated in a freezer for 7 days below 0 degrees. And that's a way to make sure that we're killing sort of any parasites, anything that's going to be present in that fish. And then we're able to eat that raw. And so many cities and states have those regulations where you do have to freeze that fish in a deep freezer before it's able to be served raw, so that they know that there's no way that someone's going to become sick from eating something like this. And so when you have a trusted source and you know where you're buying your fish, you should be able to eat it raw just like this.
So what about ceviche? Is that considered cooked, or is that considered raw fish?
So the ceviche is still raw because we have not applied any heat to it, but it's acid cooked. And so this is a way that you can still, that's obviously we're taking another step there where we are giving it some sort of a treatment with the acid and the salt to cure it and cook it, where our crudos are truly just raw fish that we're just garnishing and then eating raw. But sourcing still matters no matter what. I would still say make sure you're getting your fish from somewhere that you really trust. And we love Fulton. We love the fish. Beautiful quality. And we'll eat it raw all day.
Perfect.
All right, let's break into our salmon. So as mentioned before, we kind of want to look for those lines in the protein. With the salmon, it's extra easy to see. With the salmon, kind of between each piece of the protein, you can see there's a little bit of fat. And this is not an incredibly fatty piece of salmon, but this has a nice little bit of fat where it's going to help with that mouthfeel and just be really kind of unctuous, rich, and beautiful. So we're going to take our knife, do the same thing that we did before, and we are just going to slice towards ourselves in kind of a slow motion here. Remember, not sawing the fish. We want to really take this kind of a nice one slice at a time, starting with my knife at the top and just pulling it back towards myself.
Wow.
And so this allows you to slice really thinly, but also making sure that you're not kind of disturbing the texture of the fish. We want to keep it in nice cohesive pieces. And so when we start to saw or use a knife that's not super sharp on a piece of fish like this, we might end up kind of fraying the protein a bit, and we want to really show off that beautiful piece of salmon.
So serrated knives, this is not where they shine.
I would not
I
recommend.
would never, he says.
Excuse me.
That's amazing.
Not recommend the serrated knife for this preparation. Definitely want to go for the for just a nice sharp chef's knife, or like a small paring knife is also totally fine. So awesome. We're sliced. Let's arrange it on the plate, and then we will get our dressing made. So we are going to do something very similar to before, where we just kind of give this salmon a nice arrangement on the plate. Kind of all over, here and there. And now we'll start to make our dressing. So in our little mixing bowl, we are going to take our grapefruit juice, our sesame oil, our soy sauce and water. And why would I add water in a situation like this? And the answer is that soy sauce is very salty. And with this preparation, we really want to let that fish shine. We don't want to have it be over-seasoned with just dumping a bunch of soy sauce on top of it. So diluting it with that little bit of water just helps us make the sauce a little bit more cohesive and balanced. And then we're going to use a little bit of sugar. and add this into there because this is also going to help offset that sourness from the grapefruit. And then we'll just take a whisk. We'll get in there. We'll just whisk it up.
This is so fast. I can't believe this.
And what you'll notice that happens is that sesame oil separates from the rest of our dressing, and that, when we put it on the plate, ends up with this really nice look where it kind of pools around the salmon, but then we have those dots of the sesame oil that as we eat it, we'll be able to taste, and then you can also see it on the plate, so it's a really kind of striking and just beautiful presentation.
Hey,
So we mix our dressing. We're going to now take it and just spoon it over the top of the fish. So kind of go through each piece and give it a little bit of that sauce.
Little love. Could
And-
these preparations be mixed and matched for each of these fish?
I think this would be delicious with the tuna,
Yeah.
and I think it would work very well with a scallop. So I think when you buy the sushi bundle, I think it would be great to kind of pick your favorites and mix and match, because I do believe that each of these would work really well. Like a red snapper ceviche could totally work, and the tuna would do wonderfully with this treatment with the soy and the sesame and the grapefruit juice. So yes, I think that we've paired these because we love these flavors together. But if you have a particular fish and flavor that you want to try at home, go for it. Let us know how it goes, and I bet it will be incredibly delicious. So for this one, I chose a nice kind of large plate and also a white plate so we can really see and show off that salmon. And so once we get our sauce onto the fish, we can see those little kind of dots of that sesame oil like we were talking about. And then I'm just going to come through and we're going to add a little bit of thinly sliced jalapeno onto the top of each one of these pieces of fish. A little bit of extra if you like that extra bit of heat. If you don't love heat at all, you can either just kind of take the seeds out of the jalapeno and that pith, that white part in the center, and that will help take away some of the heat. Or you could use a milder pepper if you're not into super spicy food. But I think this is going to be a really perfect combination here. All right, here we go. Number 2, salmon with our soy, grapefruit, jalapeno, and sesame oil. Really beautiful. I mean, this is gorgeous. Yeah. Super simple, takes about 5 to 10 minutes to prepare, and can be an absolute showstopper. Let's get in there. Let's taste.
Our favorite part.
Wow. First off, the mouthfeel of this salmon is insane. It is super tender. That little bit of fat really does come through in your mouth, a really nice texture. And the crunch from the jalapeno on top helps not have this just be a dish that's all soft. Having texture in your food always helps. With the tuna crudo, we had the pistachios as that little bit of crunch in there. Right here with that little bit of heat and the crunch from the jalapeno, and it really adds a sort of layer of brightness and freshness on the top of the palate, and that is outstandingly delicious. Loving this. I'm gonna have one more bite.
I love to hear the chef tasting notes. I'm like, this tastes good. He says it's right on top of the palate. That tasting note. It's gorgeous.
Awesome. That is outstanding. We'll pop it aside and we'll work on the next one.
On to the next fish.
All right, next up, we are taking a little trip to North Africa here, and we're gonna be working with some really beautiful ingredients to highlight this red snapper. So, first up, we're gonna show our fish here. We have a lovely fillet of American red snapper, wild caught. About a 6-ounce piece here, and similarly to the tuna, this is a fish that I'm probably going to cut down the middle first, just to make sure that we can get a kind of nicer bite-sized pieces. If we go the long way, they might just be a little bit too big. So I'm going to take the red snapper, go right down the middle, and then we'll be able to slice it a little bit easier. And so again, when we talk about looking for the protein strands on this fish, on the red snapper, the protein runs kind of in almost like curved shapes. And so with this one, I'm gonna slice it on an offset bias. And so what a bias means when you're cutting something is that if I'm cutting something straight on, this is just kind of a normal chopping, normal slicing. A bias is when you really just turn it a little bit, get kind of those angular cuts. And so you can do this with vegetables, especially scallions are a really nice garnish when you cut them on the bias. And so for this fish today, this is a perfect candidate for slicing on the bias because of the way the direction the protein is running. And so for this one, we're just gonna make those nice long slices just like we did before. Knife slides right through the fish and get that all cut up. One note on red snapper is that I remove the skin before doing a crudo preparation like this. If you're searing these in a pan, that skin will be really lovely. You know, it comes with the scales off. But if you're going to be doing a crudo, I really don't like eating raw fish skin. It just doesn't have a lovely texture. And so removing the skin first, definitely a key point that I want to bring up before we eat a fish like the red snapper. Mary, any good comments in the chat?
We're just talking about all the different toppings that we could potentially be on top of the salmon. We're still sort of stuck on the salmon.
Any good ideas?
Thinly sliced cucumber,
Oh,
avocado.
yeah.
I'm just thinking of my favorite like monster sushi roll I'd want to eat.
Yes, and I think that's, these are really awesome base recipes that we're giving you that you could then riff on. If you have that half avocado in the fridge that needs to get used, put a piece of that on top of the salmon. It would be outstanding. I love the idea of the cucumber dice. All three of those flavors play so well together. So I'm here for that. That sounds wonderful.
Oh, sliced radish also. God, I love the group brainstorming.
And all of these, especially the cucumber, the radish, and the jalapeno, what they're giving us is a nice texture and going to give us that little bit of crispness, which I love to make sure you have texture in your food. When you just have something that's soft on soft,
sesame seeds.
Flavor might be good.
Sprinkle.
The sesame seeds would be an outstanding idea for the salmon dish. I think it would be perfect.
Delish.
So with our red snapper, kind of same thing here. Going to arrange that on the plate just like this. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our dressing. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some harissa. And if you're not familiar with harissa, this is it's a North African pepper paste that has some spices in it, generally fermented, so it has a nice little tang to it. And this is something that you can buy either online or in your grocery store. There's some really great brands out there, and it'll just kind of transform your home cooking. It's one of my favorite condiments and one of my favorite ingredients to use, and it's really excellent. And so you can see it's kind of like a coarse pepper paste. And what we're going to do is take that harissa, about a tablespoon, and then we're going to add some olive oil into it as well, and make this basically a harissa dressing. And so I'm just going to take the back of my spoon, kind of smear it around a little bit in the bowl. And the nice thing about buying harissa is it already has some salt in it, so I'm actually not going to season our base too much. We can give it just like a little bit of a taste. So there is a level of salt there, but I'm just going to put a tiny pinch just to make sure that we're seasoning this enough.
Where's our harissa from today?
So this is I believe this is the Mina brand of harissa. Very delicious. Yeah, really great. You can find it in a lot of grocery stores. Michael Mina, very legendary chef, started in San Francisco, has restaurants all over the country. Yeah.
I use the harissa at Trader Joe's. That is all over America.
All over,
feel free. But it does the job. It's delish. And just all sorts, the subtleties to different types of harissa. I love it. I love Moroccan food in particular, and I love seeing it in other cuisines. It's awesome.
And this harissa is not incredibly spicy. Like, it has a ton of depth of flavor, and so with the different peppers that they're using here, like, I taste it kind of in different parts of my palate, where the heat is definitely hitting me, but it's mild. It's not overpowering. And then when you add fat, which is our olive oil here, that actually helps reduce some of that heat. And so when you add acid to something that has spice to it, it often makes it worse, makes it spicier. But when you add fat to it, it actually helps bring the heat down on your palate. And so this way, we're kind of tempering that heat with a little bit of that nice olive oil. I added just a pinch more because I want to make my dressing something that I can kind of spoon over my fish. And so, as mentioned before, it's not too seasoned. And so we're going to go through and we're actually going to season our fish just a little bit right here with a little bit of that flaky salt, just like we did with our tuna, just so we make sure that we're kind of bringing out that flavor of that fish, a little bit of flaky salt, and then we'll get to it with our dressing. So I'm just going to take this and spoon it kind of all over our fish.
Oh, I love how different all of these look.
They're simple, but they're incredibly beautiful. Like, these dishes they're really showstoppers. And this is something that you could do right before your guests come, have them in the fridge, and then pull them out and have this be your first course at a dinner party. Crudo party sounds like a great thing to do in the spring and summer. Just beautiful. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to garnish with a little bit of cherry tomatoes. And so I'm going to use my same bowl, and I'm going to use the rest of that little harissa marinade there to just marinate my cherry tomatoes here that I'm just going to slice into a few slices each. And then...
Ooh, those are beautiful tomatoes.
They are. These are really nice greenhouse-grown tomatoes. This time of year, generally not loving kind of large tomatoes from the grocery store, the beefsteak tomatoes, etc. Not my favorite, but cherry tomatoes grown in a greenhouse can be outstanding all year. And so these ones are awesome. We're going to get these into our bowl. Keep all those tomato seeds in the tomato water. All has good flavor. We're just going to season this up a little bit with some salt. And we'll just give one more splash of olive oil and dress up these tomatoes before we garnish on top of our beautiful red snapper. So let's bring that back to center and take our tomatoes, and we're just gonna kind of pop them all around the plate. Kind of like to let the food, we call it, leave it where it lies. And so when you're using a spoon and kind of spooning something over the tomatoes, it's a really natural look that we're trying to achieve here. Not necessarily putting a tomato on every single piece, but letting it really kind of fall where it may on the plate and have that really, really kind of beautiful look to it. Last but not least, we're gonna garnish this up with some preserved lemon. If you've never had preserved lemons before, they are sort of a briny, citrusy, delicious way to preserve a harvest of lemons before we had refrigeration. And so what they do is they salt them, and then all of the juices get drawn out of the lemon, and then they basically pickle and ferment in their own juices with all of that salt. And so it is a tradition that is thousands of years old, but that's still being done today, and they're very delicious, salty, briny, citrusy. Going to be perfect with this harissa and that tomato on top. So I'm just going to take a little bit of our preserved lemon here, give it a bit of a garnish, just make sure it's all around the plate and that each piece may have a little piece of that preserved lemon. And then last, I'm just going to garnish with a little bit of torn cilantro over the top. And again, I'm not thinking too hard about how we're tearing the cilantro. Just little pieces here and there are going to be perfect.
Wow,
and
look at those colors.
It's a beautiful dish. Yeah, it's a gorgeous plate. And this one is utilizing flavors from North Africa, but when someone eats this, they're going to kind of recognize and kind of feel all these flavors. A little bit of heat, a little bit of citrus, the nice sweetness from those tomatoes. It's looking absolutely gorgeous. So, loving the way this one looks. This is a beautiful plate of food.
Oh yeah! Wow! It looks great with your apron.
Let's have a bite. See how it is. I'm going to go right for this one with the nice piece of tomato. Oh my gosh. That is outstanding. Little bit of heat. Kind of the brininess, the high notes from those preserved lemons. Lovely texture on that red snapper. Really great. And the tomato adds a little bit of sweetness in there, but also provides a little bit of acid as well. That is a gorgeous plate. The cilantro is really kind of that high note with the herbaceousness. Really beautiful. One more bite, and then we'll set it aside.
Probably just one more bite.
Just one, little bite.
Folks in the chat are saying that's a gorgeous dish. It's just, I can't wait to see all of them together.
Wow, that rocks.
Oh yeah. So how long, say I'm chatting a lot at my dinner party, I forget that all of the fish dishes are out. When does it become unsafe to eat these?
That's a great question. I would say this is something that you do want to consume in, under an hour. Mm-hmm. And so when we have this fish and say we're, processing it, slicing it, marinating it, and then putting it in the fridge, sitting out at room temperature for any more than an hour probably won't be great. But so that's something where, I like to keep it chilled as long as I can, chill those plates so it helps stay cold. And then that way you buy yourself a little bit more time of how long you can have this out at a dinner party on a little buffet, whatever it might be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love to hear it.
So we're going to get back into our scallops now, and we have two more things that we have to do for our scallops. One of which is slicing some red onion. If you've ever had a ceviche or an aguachile before, you probably noticed that we usually have a bit of red onion or some sort of a allium component in our dish. And so raw onion can be a little bit off-putting for some folks, and so today we're going to show you a little technique that can help make it just a little bit more mild. And so what we have is just a quarter of a red onion here, and I've left the core in the red onion. And so what that means is I did not cut the end off before I cut it into 4 pieces. And the reason being is that this is going to be a really nice way to hold that onion together. Right here, you can kind of see that core still left in there. It's going to help keep the onion together while we're slicing it. And so I'm just going to take my knife, and we're going to slice as thin as possible, kind of across this red onion, just like that. And then we're going to take that and soak it in a little bit of ice water. And so what soaking the onion in ice water does is it just removes some of that raw onion flavor, that really kind of intense flavor that some folks don't love. And we're just going to take it and kind of massage it in this water here for a second. And it just makes it a little bit more mild, a little bit easier to use. I often do this when I'm making a salad that has red onions in it. And if you have a little bit more time, what you can do is just run this under the tap water, leave it in a bowl of cold water in the sink, and just let that run for a couple of minutes on it, and it's going to rinse off the onion just a little bit, so when we eat it, It's a much more mild flavor. We get the nice crunch from it, but we've actually removed some of that kind of harshness, bitterness, etc. from the raw onion. And this way, we get the sweetness and the crunch. So we're just gonna let this soak in that cold water for a couple minutes while we grab our scallops out of the fridge and get onto our last dish here, the scallop ceviche.
Woohoo!
Give a quick wipe down, and then we will move on. All right. So these scallops have been in the fridge for exactly 30 minutes now. And what we can tell, or how we can tell rather, that these have been cooked by the acid is that the color changes. So when you first had the scallops, you notice that they had kind of like a bouncy texture to them, pretty soft. And now when we take a look at this fish, it takes on a much more opaque color and almost becomes whiter. And this is what we're looking for with our ceviche. It's firmed up the texture a little bit with the salt and the acid, and then it also has, the color has changed pretty significantly. And let's give it a taste just to kind of see the texture. Yeah, that's good, that's delicious.
Folks are freaking out about your knife skills, by the way, in the chat. Where is Nico's knife class?
That's a great question, but
okay,
you know,
stand by, everybody.
17 years in professional kitchens, you get some good knife skills.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Could we use yellow onions?
You could, yeah. Like I think using a red onion, it's a more of a classic preparation.
Yeah,
but if you
definitely.
don't have that at home and you have yellow onions in the pantry, by all means. If you didn't have that, if you have green onions in the fridge, use the green onions. I think like just getting that allium flavor in here is really what we're looking for. And so on that first taste of the scallop, what I'm getting is the nice bright acidity, but then also the texture of the fish has completely changed. And so that's really where this kind of firming up of the flesh of the fish, it matters for the ceviche. Where we could have eaten it raw before like a crudo, a marinated crudo, now it's a ceviche because the texture has changed and we've sort of started to cook that with the acid. I'm gonna give this another little pinch of salt just because it needs a little bit more seasoning. And all that's gonna do is continue to help pull that acid up. It's gonna make those peppers, the Peruvian pepper paste, taste more delicious and really bring more flavor out of the scallops. Just a little bit more salt in there. Next up, we're gonna add in some cilantro. Just a couple tablespoons of chopped cilantro. And then we're gonna hit it with a tablespoon of olive oil. And this olive oil really helps add some depth to it and also just a little bit of richness. It's not, this is kind of an optional ingredient. We put it as such in the recipe, but I really like the way the olive oil kind of plays with that lemon juice, or excuse me, with the lime juice, and kind of adds to the texture of the sauce of the ceviche, if you will. So I'm gonna take my spoon. We're just gonna mix all that together and keep letting this sit for a couple minutes while we get back to our onions and make sure we dry those off.
Sorry, just going back to our tuna preparation.
Yeah.
What brand of ají amarillo were you using?
That is a great question, and we can get back to you on that.
We can absolutely get back to you on
before the
that.
end of class.
Perfect.
So I'm going to take my onions here, and I'm just going to try to pat them dry as much as I can on a paper towel. This way we're not adding any more liquid or moisture or something that's going to take away from the wonderful flavor of our ceviche. And so I'm just pressing these between a paper towel on a little plate here. Keep it super easy. Just get that excess moisture out of the onion. And then we'll add those into our ceviche, just like that. Just going to dispose of my water here. And then let's mix it up. Just going to take my spoon, kind of work it all around, mix up our beautiful ceviche. And then before we plate it, we want to give it a taste one more time to make sure we're happy with the acid, make sure we're happy with the salt level. Oh, so good.
Woohoo.
So good. A little bit more salt. And right now, the reason I'm adding a little more salt is I'm getting a lot of that acid on the palate. Very delicious. The lime juice is delicious, but I just want it to sort of balance out a little bit more. So one more pinch of salt just to get the fish, the scallops here, to the point where everything feels like it's properly seasoned and very delicious.
And what are
One
we
more.
serving this with today?
So we're going to serve this in a traditional style with some tostadas.
Oh, yeah.
And so tostadas are really just an entire crisped corn tortilla. And so this is a dish that traditionally you might serve this on the tostada, where you would plate all of your, beautiful ceviche on top of it. If you've ever had a, kind of a tostada in a Mexican restaurant before with ceviche, this is how it may be served. Or in the Peruvian cuisine, they eat it with sometimes plantain chips, sweet potato chips, corn chips, or something like this, an entire tostada. So going to be really delicious where we have that crunchy tostada. Again, all about the texture. And it's a great vehicle for dipping in there and having a bunch of the ceviche. So I'm feeling really happy about the flavor. Let's go into the bowl. And what you'll notice is that the aji amarillo becomes one with the lime juice, the olive oil, the little bit of moisture that maybe came out of the scallops, and we get this kind of nice, thick sauce. It's not really watery in the bottom of there. It's really got a nice texture to it. And so when we go ahead and eat it, we'll be able to, either use a tostada like this and just dip, or if we make individual ones, we could put them on the tostadas for each guest and kind of put it out as an appetizer like that. I'm just gonna go classic style and just dip right into here and have a bite.
It's like the best salsa ever.
It is. It's like the best. Yeah, it's like a fish salsa.
It's perfect. The finale. This was the one Nico told me before class he was most excited.
I love ceviche, and so this is outstanding. The heat is pretty mild. It's really not overpowering at all. And so if you want it a little spicier, you could totally add a little bit extra aji amarillo, maybe garnish with some jalapenos, dice some jalapenos or habaneros in there if you like heat. But for me, this hits all those marks. It's seasoned really well. The acid is really bright, which means you just want to keep eating it. We have the nice crunch from the red onions, and then when we dip those tostadas in there, it really kind of all comes together. The flavor of the corn tortilla, especially the crispy corn tortilla in there, outstanding. Let's do one more bite, and then we'll show you all 4 of them together.
Perfect. Yeah, you just need that second test bite just to make sure that really happened.
Oh, it's still good.
Yeah, it's still really good.
All right. Well, now time for the grand finale. All 4 dishes.
Wow.
Here we go. We got them all. Our scallop ceviche, outstanding, really delicious. The first one, the tuna crudo, super lovely. Love the pistachios on there. Lemon zest is killer. Salmon, a little bit of soy, grapefruit, jalapeno, amazing. And then we have our red snapper with that harissa, preserved lemon,
that's
tomatoes,
something else.
cilantro.
For
This is the raw fish dish right here, folks. You should make this at home. It is outstanding. Get that sushi bundle from Fulton Fish and make this at home.
Oh yeah, every fish that we use today is part of Fulton's signature sushi bundle. So I've threw a couple links in the chat, but their options are insane. You guys, I'd check it out. And I know that some folks are saying that there were some notes on the recipe to add coconut milk, but that is not obviously what we did today. That was a slight typo. But coconut milk could be great in some of these preparations if needed.
Coconut milk, works very well in some preparations. We decided to pull it out of this recipe because we actually really liked how the flavor was on its own without adding any extra fat or any extra flavors. Those scallops, those New Bedford scallops, they sing on their own. They really don't need too much else added to them. So with that little bit of chili from the aji amarillo, a little bit of the lime juice there, the cilantro and the red onion, that's really all we ended up wanting. So
nice.
No need for the coconut milk.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us. Everything that we got in class today can be ordered from the Fulton Fish Market, fultonfishmarket.com. If you subscribe, 15% off every order, 10% off if you use the code Crudo, and please join us for our next homemade class. It's going to be on March 13th, banana walnut soda bread. Thank you so much, folks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.